morning. Thank you all for coming today. I'm here to introduce someone I've known for 15 years, a talented writer, artist, and public speaker, and one of the finest people I've ever met. Please welcome Myra St. Clair Baldwin.
Hello. So I'm going to wear a different hat every time I come out on stage, and that's going to be my trademark, is wearing different hats, because I like playing pretend at being Carrie Brownstein and imagine myself as different characters like she does in her skits, so that'll be my trademark. Anyway, thank you all for coming today. So if you've already read some of my material on the blog, then you may be familiar with some of what I'm already going to say today, but we want to go ahead and put out a televised version of it to make my blog a multimedia blog, and not everyone reads, so it'll be more accessible that way. So today I'm here to talk about my schizophrenic episode or spy operation that I endured. My mother didn't want me publicly saying anything that would be denouncing my siblings, but I'm just saying what I heard their voices say, and if they didn't do anything, then they have nothing to worry about. And if they did actually spy me, then they belong in prison. Anyways, the voices said I had great speaking skills and star power, so I'm here to test that out. And actually, I don't have a lot of experience with public speaking. I did very little speaking in college and in my profession. The voices were right about some things, and the voices were wrong about some things. A few weeks ago, I was excited at the idea of speaking before an audience and imagined stardom in my future. And then I started feeling like it was a lot like bloodletting, because writing down this stuff and planning for the speech, it was really emotional for me. So you're my first audience and hopefully my last. Just kidding. Been terrified the last week or two and having lots of neck tension. I was already having a lot of neck tension from writing alone, from using the computer, and also the emotional stuff that I've been talking about. It really gets to me. I get angry. But I got the big idea that I'd speak and have my friend interview me afterwards and film it and put it out there online. And I guess that's why my blog is called The Deep End, because I just jump in head first. And there was a history to it becoming called the Deep End title. When I was at the SFCC communicator in 2003 to 2004 as a student there, the editor of the opinion column gave me a column, the opinion section gave me a column named The Deep End, and he made that up himself, so I guess I had a history of doing it then too, and then I opened the bookstore on a whim, so there you go. I'm just jumping in head first. Anyway, I was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which may or may not be the case. It's possible I had schizophrenia and was hearing things, but I believe it's also possible that there was a real spy operation by neighbors and families, and that my imagination got carried away with it. So that it triggered more thoughts in my head, so I thought that people were reading my thoughts and sending me thoughts in my head. Anyways, what schizophrenia is a psychotic break with reality. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines schizophrenia as a mental illness that is characterized by disturbances in thought, such as delusions, perceptions such as hallucinations, and behaviors, such as disorganized speech or catatonic behavior, by a loss of emotional responsiveness and extreme apathy, and by noticeable deterioration in the level of functioning in everyday life. There are several subtypes of schizophrenia, including paranoid schizophrenia, which the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines paranoid schizophrenia as schizophrenia characterized especially by delusions of persecution, grandiosity, or jealousy, and by hallucinations, such as hearing voices, chiefly of an auditory nature. And sometimes schizophrenia is also accompanied by hoarding, which I was having a problem with hoarding in the Portland Plaza apartments, but my problem with hoarding dated back decades to when I was a teenager and started collecting stuff and didn't let go of anything, and then it accumulated over the years. And then after I closed the bookstore, I kept tons of the books that I had in there and some of the furniture. And then I had to let go of some of that furniture when I moved in with my ex-boyfriend Adam because he insisted on it. But I did have a really hard time parting with stuff, and that was decades before I was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Characteristics of my schizophrenic episode or spy operation included hearing voices, especially those of siblings and neighbors. And then I had paranoid thinking, such as believing there was a spy operation against me. I had a sense of persecution. The voices were being abusive with me, and I believed there was a plot against me. I thought that they wanted to get me, to chase me off from that building, or get me kicked out, or get me put in prison where I wouldn't be in the building anymore, or get me put in a psych ward where I'd be away from that building. Sometimes people do conspire, so it is important to realize that there's always that possibility. Anyways, I had a sense of grandeur too, of being important and famous. I mean, I wanted to end the age of garbage. I wanted to go out there and set a precedent and show the world an example of someone that was conserving and turning everything into junk and not letting anything go to waste. Every bit of material would be useful and could be turned into art and other useful stuff. And I also was fighting for the privacy rights for each and every U.S. American citizen. Ideally non-citizens too, though a lot of people don't care about non-citizens, and apparently they don't have constitutional rights. As for negative symptoms, I'm not aware of having a lot of negative symptoms. Like apathy, I don't think I was apathetic. I was putting up a real fight against the voices. I mean, they were literally abusing me and repeating them, and I was repeating myself, and I would say, "Stop it, stop it, stop it." And then one of the voices called that more role rehearsal, because they believed I was putting on an act. So anyways, what schizophrenia it's not split personality or multiple personality disorder. Although a few of the voices wanted to know if I had multiple personality disorder, I'm not really sure why they were doing that. It was a couple of my siblings, their voices, they wanted to know if I had multiple personality disorder. And then one of the voices, I thought he was a reporter for the Inlander, that he said that I might be a victim of mistaken identity. So that had me panicking and freaking out, going out there thinking that someone was malingering in my name, collecting Social Security, and going out there and going to hospitals and getting drugs in my name. I mean, I didn't know what they were doing in my name. I thought they might have even killed someone and be trying to pin it on me. So I was really freaked out. Anyways, when I started hearing the voices in my home, I started responding out loud to the voices. And I thought there was a journalist from the Inlander. I thought my siblings. At first I thought I heard my dad's voice, but I didn't hear my parents much after that. That was in the very beginning. I heard some voices of people that I worked with at SCC in service learning, including people from SFCC service learning, and people from the SCC Hagen Center Foundation for the Humanities at SCC, and previous co-workers and ex-employers, including people from McDonald's that I worked with years ago. And also from Diedrich's Coffee, which is in Irvine, California. I thought my sister Joyce or Glenn Baldwin, which is my ex-husband's dad, might have flown them in because they're pretty wealthy, so they'd have the budget for it if they were really gonna go to extreme lengths to do that to me. Anyways, I thought they had set up tiny cameras and a speaker in my home, and I couldn't see the cameras through all the clutter. And I was not going to disrupt the clutter. There are some people with schizophrenia who will tear down walls to find cameras, to find hidden cameras, hidden speakers. Sometimes they think they have an implant and they'll rip up their skin to try to do that. I wasn't going to do that. I've seen the movie before, I forget the name of that movie, but I saw a movie where a guy was tearing up his arm, and I've heard a horror story about a couple of people that were doing that too. And also, I just wasn't going to move my art. I had pieces of art that I was envisioning where the stuff hadn't been cemented properly. I had it arranged how I wanted, but I hadn't gotten around to cementing it down properly. So during the spy operation, I developed a lot of nicknames, including the Princess in the Attic above Boo Radley's and Atticus, and that was the name that I gave myself. Some of the nicknames were named by the voices. This one I gave myself because I imagined myself being a princess stuck in the attic with making stuff from Camel cigarette packaging, because there's a princess in the attic in the book, Still Life with Woodpecker. There's a princess that, she's a modern day princess. She is cheerleading in a gym during a game one time in front of her parents, and she has a miscarriage, and for that her parents force her into the attic for a few years. So she develops an intense attraction to the moon, and also she studies Camel cigarette packaging and finds that really interesting. So I was making stuff from junk, including cigarette packaging, and I made this love shrine. There's also a love shrine in that book. And so I made a love shrine to a guy that I liked, and it was his favorite book. So, and he finally saw that love shrine one time when he stopped by, but I never knew when he was coming over. Anyways, another one nickname I had was Cinderella Butt, and that's one that Joyce, my sister Joyce's voice gave me. And that would be the kind of voice she would give me, because when my son was a baby, she named him Nickelbutt. So then years later, she named me Cinderella Butt, and I took a fancy to that name because I could imagine myself in a Cinderella gown made from scrap fabrics that were sewn together with lots of chores to do to get ready for my next inspection. Because I had to get ready for an upcoming inspection of my apartment so that I could stay in it. It was HUD housing, so they have these inspections. And my place wasn't up to snuff. So I was worried about getting it ready, but the voices had me emotionally crippled, and I couldn't do any cleaning. And I wasn't doing much cooking either. Another nickname I had was My Scholarly Myra Sue, and that nickname was from Glenn Baldwin, who is my ex-husband's dad, because a couple of the voices said, "What does it look like is going on here?" And he looks at the screen that shows my apartment, and he said, "Well, by all means, she has all these books, and all this time on her hands, she ought to be a scholar by now." So he started calling me My Scholarly Myra Sue. I was also called the citizen who spoke through walls, our star reporter, because I was blurting stuff out through the walls, because I was trying to make it so anyone through out the halls or in other apartments could hear me. I was named our star entertainer. At some point I was playing a tape from Oingo Boingo that has to do with, it has a song about 1984 on there, and also the book 1984, and also it has a song about Who Do You Want to Be Today, about people just playing different personas, which I found appropriate since they were trying to figure out if I had multiple personality disorder. They named me our star celebrity, our star detective. I took on the name the Star Ace Hoarder because at some point they were, I heard someone giving a workshop about me being a Class 1 hoarder, and I couldn't remember the name Class 1, so I started identifying as the Star Ace Hoarder. But they were talking about how I was hoarding and I was shuffling stuff around, and she said, this is what hoarders do, they shuffle stuff around. And I was also known as one who watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I guess I got that title because the spies or voices thought I was a bit of a wild child at the time. So reality testing. In a group that I took, cognitive behavioral therapy for psychosis group, we were taught about reality testing. And that's where the antecedent isn't always what you would think. And what's happening later in the scene isn't necessarily what you think. For example, they showed some different scenarios, and one of them, it shows this girl in a short skirt hunched over a car and the guy handing her money, and so it looks like she might be a prostitute. Oh no, the police pull in behind them, so it looks like she might be a prostitute. But actually, they go back to the antecedent and showed that she was actually getting out of the car and saying goodbye to her dad, and he was giving her some money, so she leaned back into the car to get the money. So that has left me with two possibilities. One possibility is that it's caused by psychosis, caused by schizophrenia, and the other possibility is that there was a real spy operation. I'm not totally eliminating that possibility. It's possible that my imagination got carried away with what was started as a real spy operation. Anyway, before and during the spy operation, while I was living at the Boo Radley's building, I was receiving inspection notices on my door and needed to get my place straightened up. So my home was overgrown with big, huge multimedia art projects, books, hundreds and hundreds of books stuffed on milk crates along the walls throughout the apartment. And then I had lots of containers and packaging that I was saving. And that included like milk bottles, and pop bottles, and jelly jars, and Pringles containers that I had sanitized. And I had a container waiting for some stuff that needed to be washed and sanitized. And then I had containers with already sanitized stuff. And my dad wanted to take some of that home with them so I'd be ready for inspection, but I'm like, I can't let go of the stuff that's been sanitized. Where are you going to put it? It will get unsanitized. And I was wanting that stuff back so that I could make my art projects from them. So anyway, the voices said some great things about me and some really mean things about me. I thought I was going through a psychologically torturous mind control stunt. The voices, it was especially my sister's voices, were calling me fake and were wondering if I was up to the lie test. Well, that was Mary Hurst, the manager of the building, that was wondering if I was up to the lie test. The voices wanted to know if I was capable of independent living. Especially my sister Joyce's voice, she wanted to know what I was capable of. And then the voices were testing me for bipolar and multiple personality disorder. I'm not sure why the bipolar, maybe it was because I was being wild for a while and I had a lot of visitors coming and going. I lived downtown, I was meeting some homeless people through a neighbor, and I was having them into my home and learning more about homelessness and the homeless, and trying to, and instead of the stereotypes that I had been taught before. The voices that I had star power and was a real capable actress, and for that I was excited. I was excited at the idea of being an actress. I wanted to go out there on stage and be an actress, But what they were really trying to prove that I wasn't disabled, didn't belong in the building, and was faking my illness. As I already said, the voices said I had great speaking skills. This, they said, while they were putting me through criminal psychological torture, and I was passionately yelling at them repeatedly to stop it. The voices wanted to know if I was civil rights minded, and I'm like, hell yeah, I'm civil rights minded, and you have no right to be spying on me. The voices wanted to reform me, and when they said they wanted to reform me, that brought out my rebellious instinct. I'm like, oh no, you're not going to reform me over my dead body. So I was extremely rebellious with the voices. The voices picked on me for smoking tobacco out of Bible paper. I'm like, come on, if you want me smoking out of regular papers, bring some papers and leave them at my door. Otherwise, this is all I got the money for, so I'm going to be smoking out of Bible paper. They finally learned to accept that over time and didn't make a fuss out of it after a while. They did fuss about me swearing, so they didn't want me swearing, so I did give up swearing for a while. The voices called me useless, especially my brother Gene's voice. He was calling me useless. The voices talked about me being slow. They wanted to know how slow I would go and what I meant when I said I was sometimes slow, because I was already disabled and I had problems with brain fog associated with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. So sometimes I had brain fog, especially if I'd been overdoing it. And so sometimes I would be really slow. But I was especially slow when they were talking to me through a speaker in my home, because they were slowing me down because I kept hearing their voice and I couldn't concentrate on what I was going to do. And then I'm like, where are my keys? My brother Gene's voice would sometimes call me a genius and then turn around and call me as ho as they go. And I'm like, it's not okay to call anyone as ho as they go. And it would surprise me that his voice was calling me genius, because I was shouting out words of wisdom from a leftist perspective, and he's a right-winger, so it just made no sense. But I guess his voice was being sarcastic, and I just didn't catch on to that right away. A couple of the voices brought up some sexual trauma I'd been through in high school. And I don't really want to go into detail about that. That was really upsetting. Sometimes privacy invasion is real. Sometimes people really do get spied on. So I still believe it's possibly a misdiagnosis. And sometimes neighbors and family are the ones that are most likely to spy on a neighbor or a family member. I was at high risk for an actual spy operation. I had some radical ideology, and I was yelling out into the hallway, threatening a revolution if they kicked everyone out onto the streets without food stamps, without a place to go, and without TV to pacify them. I was having lots of foot traffic, so that raised eyebrows. I was solo polyamorous in theory, so I was open to dating different people and not just being with one person. Though I should say solo polyamory is more about love in relationships and not about sex so much. So I was yelling out about some people might want to have late night communist meetings out into the hallway, and that's our American right as US citizens, freedom of association. I was also yelling out about freedom of religion, which included witchcraft, so people should have the right to do witchcraft in their homes, because we had freedom of religion in that building, which included every religion, including Wiccan. Before the spy operation, Lauren, the maintenance guy, had said he was keeping an eye on my place. One neighbor asked if I even belonged there. This was before the spy operation started. I said yes, to which he said, "We'll see about that. I don't know how you plan to figure out if I belonged in that building without going into my protected healthcare information or spying on me." At one point before the spy operation started, I hadn't kept up with the recertification process. So then I suddenly found myself responsible for the market value on rent for 3 months. My parents did eventually pull through just in time, in the nick of time. A couple of my alleged spies called me ripe for the picking. I was unfamiliar with that term at the time. I didn't know what it meant, so I find it kind of curious that someone was using a term that I was unfamiliar with, and I just recently looked that up. It means, ripe for the picking means at the perfect point to be exploited. The voices wanted to know what I was up to, and I wouldn't tell them. They wanted to know if I was capable of independent living. They wanted to know if I had any illegal activity going on in my home, and I wouldn't tell them. I said, you have no right to spy on me no matter what you might think. They wanted to know if I was a criminal. I'm like, you don't have a right to spy on me no matter what you think I might be up to. They wanted to know if I was an underground journalist. And actually, I did like the idea of being an underground journalist. I considered myself a bit of an underground wannabe journalist or an anthropologist. But I refused to answer to them. I was fighting for privacy rights for all, no matter what anyone thought they might be up to. They were in fact the true criminals. So I take my medication just in case I do have schizophrenia, because sometimes people think they don't have schizophrenia and they stop taking their medication and then psychosis starts all over again. I also had reformed myself just in case that makes a difference so that my siblings won't start a real spy operation on me or my neighbors. I'm a quiet, well-mannered tenant. I'm not bringing in lots of visitors. I'm not making huge art projects from junk. And I am no longer accumulating too much stuff. I'm trying to keep that in check. And it's kind of at full capacity right now, so it's going to be a little bit challenging, but I am trying to not accumulate too much stuff because I don't want to lose my home again. So there's PTSD and voices in the head. Sometimes people have PTSD, which can come with psychosis, hearing voices both in and outside of the head. So I think it's possible that I was spied on initially and that triggered PTSD, and that I started hearing voices in and out of the head because of that, which continued long after I left my apartment. So essay number 1 is titled A Carrie Brownstein Wannabe Tries on Different Hats. Let me pull up a trailer for Portlandia so you can see who Carrie Brownstein is. Sorry, let me pull up a trailer of Portlandia so you can see who Carrie Brownstein is. Oh, I don't have the internet set up. Okay, I didn't set up the internet, so we're not going to do that today. Let's see. So I brought some props that I put together a Cinderella collection of stuff that reminded me of the spy operation. So I'm going to show a few of those today. Some stuff I saved because it reminded me of this, and when I was determining what to say. So I'm still collecting some stuff that I didn't want to let go of, but eventually I'll sell some of this stuff. I also brought a few items from the library. So this book is called Asylums, and I haven't read it, but this is where they wanted me to go. They wanted to put me in prison or the psych ward. This is the right to privacy. I haven't read this yet either. I had lots of books in my home and I hadn't read them all. But this is the right to privacy, and I was adamant about privacy rights for every individual on the planet. This is the vagina monologues. This was something I saved because it made me think of the spy operation, because I was a empowered feminist fighting for the feminist rights of every woman. This says, only you can stop the semiotic subjugation of our lady friends. That was, I got from my ex-boyfriend, and I think it came from his friend Tim. This, I saved the fabric from a project my son did, and it reminded me too of how I wanted to make stuff from scraps. And that includes saving yarn, just pieces, small pieces of yarn, and wanting to make stuff from them. This I don't own, but it's Portlandia, and this, I was playing pretend at being a Carrie Brownstein. This has angry women on it, and I was an angry woman, so I saved that because it made me think about how I was being a feminist at the time. This is the Far Side Gallery. This reminded me of one of the guys in the spy operation whose voice I thought I heard Dan May's voice. So, and I remember him liking the Far Side when I was a teenager working at McDonald's, so I brought this and kept it. So, orange is the new black. Also, when they were talking about me having acting skills, I said, great, I want to be an actress like the one in Orange is the New Black. She's badass. And that's Still Life with Woodpecker. To Kill a Mockingbird, I lived above Atticus and Boo Radley, so that I checked out from the library. Man at the Helm is about a pill-poppin' mama who is play acting for her family, and she ends up getting separated from her husband and then going downhill because she starts popping pills and having her daughters go across London to buy pills for her. Her doctor got her addicted to them. But I liked it because she was play acting, always acting out a play for her family. And this is a plastic thing that my ex-boyfriend Adam gave me. He said it reminded him of me. And I guess that's because it's silly, but it's also plastic, and I don't promote the plastic industry, but I will keep this, and I eventually will sell it when I sell off my Cinderella book collection. And that's all I will show you today from that collection. Let's see here. So retribution theory. A couple of the voices used the term retribution. They were wondering if I would ever seek retribution against them. One person said, keep in mind retribution can come in many forms. Well, indeed, if they really were spying on me, then I would want them in prison. That would be my form of retribution. But if they're just imaginary voices, there's not much I can do about that. Anyway, I think I have a story to tell, and I want to make money off of it, and maybe some people will get busted for spying on me, if they really did spy on me. So I have some future ideas and plans. I don't know if I'll be speaking again. I'll see later. I probably got to take a couple of speech classes. Today we're videotaping this, and we're going to post raw footage up today, and my friend Orion's going to interview me later today, and we're going to put that up on my blog. And he'll be interviewing me about different stages in my life, including when I opened a bookstore, and when we worked for the Finger newspaper, and when I was married, and when I was a child. I'm going to try to finish 6 essays in the first year, and then maybe put together a book in a special binding and sell that. And maybe I'll put my first 4 essays up on my blog and then save a couple of them that I just published in the book. And let's see. I want to make them like episodes of a show where there's maybe 2 or 3 different things going on during that whole essay that come together. In February, I want to do teleconferencing with my friend Orion and bring in some people from different cities and have them on the screen and discuss the finger paper that we worked for and the bookstore that I ran. And we're going to take advantage of the level up classroom upstairs. Get that booked for mid-February maybe, is what I'm thinking. We can only reserve it 2 months in advance, and they're closing the library, downtown library, on the 29th of February. So some of the library stuff is going to get moved over to above the bus plaza, and some of it will just go away for a couple of years while they remodel. They don't know if they're going to have any of these meeting rooms available. Let's see. At some point, I'd like to do a dress-up video photo shoot. Go with my friend, go to the Goodwill outlet store, get lots of neat stuff, take scissors to it, take not paper clips, safety pins to it, and make some really neat, interesting clothes and do a dress-up photo shoot and take pictures of it too for my blog. And that has nothing to do with politics and religion, which is what I actually started my blog to do. But it has everything to do with art and sustainability, because it's taking stuff that's already been used and putting it to future use. And art is really healthy, and we are going to survive the future. We are going to have to learn to make stuff from scraps and have fun doing it, because we have to have fun to make it worth the long road ahead of us. Yeah, I might commission more illustrations or do some of my own for my essays in the future. And video skits. My spy said I had star power and great acting skills, so I'll perhaps test that out by doing video skits. Maybe video skits about the spy operation. Let's see. So at some point I'll be writing about politics and religion, including my somewhat radical views. And I'll be writing more about life before, during, and after the spy operation. And at some point, I might become scholarly at being homeless. I'd be scholarly at homelessness, since I was homeless for a while, and I had already learned some about homelessness before I became homeless. And I used to go to homeless coalition meetings years before I was homeless, and then I've been learning more about homelessness after getting a home. So I might just go ahead and read some books about homelessness and become scholarly at that and write some articles about that. And that's my speech for today. Thank you all for coming. Oh, we're gonna do a Q&A.
Anyone who has any questions, please raise your hand. We'll deliver a microphone to you.
Thank you for sharing all that. I appreciate it so much. And one of the things I've been curious about is if you're comfortable sharing a little bit about how did you come to the place where you could afford to open a bookstore, or can you elaborate on what that looked like?
Yeah, I had developed a pretty extensive line of credit that I had built up, and that included being able to do cash advances. And I opened it with a credit card. But I only got through a few months of it and then had to close it. And that wasn't making a lot of money because a lot of people are buying stuff online, and the Monroe Street Bridge was closed, and it was north of that bridge. It's right by where the 4,000 Holes is right now.
So it was an actual storefront.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and we had some punk rock shows there too. My friend Nikki would organize these punk rock shows, and I would have them there at the store. So that was a lot of fun. Any more questions?
I have, so there's things that I'll be learning, but when you were homeless for
Yes.
some time, so would you find places to sleep with friends in their places, like sofas? Surfing, or would you survive outside or under
Well,
bridges?
I've actually been homeless twice, and one was before I lived in the Coeur d'Alene Plaza when I had left my ex-boyfriend, who I'm still friends with, but I left him, and so I was doing a little bit of couch surfing then and also staying at my parents' place. later, the second time I became homeless, I spent a couple months out at my parents' house, and then I started going back and forth between the shelter, which was the Hope House shelter located downtown, and going out to my parents', which was way out in the country. So I do like a week at one place and a week at the other, which gave me a break. And it was nice to be downtown sometimes, and sometimes it was nice to be out in the country.
First, I just want to say thank you for talking about this stuff. I have schizophrenia too, and I know that it is very shied away from, and let alone the stigma on it is really crappy. But I was just wondering how your relationship is with your voices now, and if it's gotten better, or if you still hear them at all.
I'm not hearing voices right now, no. I am traumatized by this operation, and that's something I'd like to see more research about, is schizophrenia-related PTSD, because there's research done that a lot of people with schizophrenia also have trauma in their past, but I didn't find any body of research that shows that people have been traumatized by the actual experience of schizophrenia.
I relate to that a lot.
Any more questions?
So have you, throughout the time since you've been through this process of writing, and have you gone to counseling, or, being on medication, does the state require that you are on, not visitations, but excuse me, counseling sessions or any of that type of?
The state isn't requiring that I get counseling right now, but I went back into counseling because I am digging up a lot of trauma that I'm reliving by doing this writing process. So I got back into weekly counseling. Before I was in RTS, Recovery Transition Services at Frontier Behavioral Health, so I still got to go to SLP activities for fun and socialization. And I could go to the Evergreen Club for a while, which I stopped going because I wanted to get more into writing and stuff. But I wanted to go back into weekly counseling because I'm digging up a lot of old trauma and it hurts.
Then, yeah, I did want to ask you also, did you ever qualify for disability, mental health disability?
Yes, I did.
Good. That's nice to have that safety net.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it could happen again to me, so. I mean, ideally I'll make a career out of writing and speaking and not need the safety net, but it could take forever to establish myself, and it could happen to me again. Something could trigger it. Any more questions?
I was recently talking about being homeless and having PTSD, schizophrenia, and people were asking me about relationships. And did you find that when you were homeless and you were with homeless people, that you actually had closer relationships in your life?
I made some good friends during the time. It was a couple people I made really close friendships with. And a lot of people I just saw in group, or I'd see at the Evergreen Club, or I'd say hi and stuff, but there are a couple in particular, and they chose me. They wanted my time. They would not let me go. So it felt good to be needed by them, and it was nice to have their company. But it was always nice to go over to Frontier Behavioral Health and the Evergreen Club and the SLP activities, because you always see people you know and you get comfortable, and it's really nice to have that with camaraderie with people that understand.
I wonder too, so when you've gone to counseling, did you ever have any conflict as far as the documentation that Frontier or any other organization acquired, or you know what I'm saying? Like, when they document, did you ever have any battle within yourself as far as their intention and what they're going to do with that?
For a long time, I wasn't worried about it, but recently there's something I told my counselor, and I told her, don't put that in the notes. Because I used to work for Frontier Behavioral Health, and I know the people that are computer operators that have access to those health records sometimes, because they're doing their work, and so sometimes they need to view the files. And I don't want them knowing everything about me, so I told her, don't put that in my notes. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you all for coming.